It was just another weekday afternoon, the kind of day where nothing unexpected ever happens until it does. The gym was alive with movement, sweat, and the kind of electric rhythm you only find where pain meets discipline. Machines whirred, dumbbells clanged, music pulsed through overhead speakers. Regulars pushed their limits, chasing the best version of themselves, unaware that something unforgettable was about to unfold, something that would leave the entire gym speechless. And it all began when a quiet man in a plain black hoodie stepped in through the doors. At first, no one gave him a second glance, no entourage, no flashy gear, just a towering figure in his 50s with a calm presence and a quiet stride. No one knew that behind the hoodie was Dwayne Johnson. Yes, that Dwayne Johnson, the global icon, the action titan, the man who built a legacy out of strength, endurance, and sheer willpower. But today, there were no cameras, no red carpets, just one man looking for a simple workout. He didn't come to prove anything. He came for peace, for focus, for the grind he's known for, away from spotlights and applause. But fate had other plans, because across the gym floor, someone noticed him, not with admiration, but with arrogance. His name was Ryan, a trainer with broad shoulders, a bigger ego, and an even louder mouth. Ryan was the kind of guy who didn't just want attention, he needed it. To him, the gym wasn't just a workplace. It was his stage, and he was the self-appointed star. And now, his ego had found a new target. To Ryan, Dwayne looked like just another older guy trying to relive his glory days. The hoodie hid everything, the years of training, the discipline, the humility. Ryan didn't recognize him, and that would be his first mistake. From across the room, Ryan watched Dwayne stretch quietly in the corner. No noise, no flexing, just calm, focused preparation. And to Ryan, silence meant weakness. This wasn't a man who looked like he belonged in his gym. He smirked, he chuckled. Then with his usual smug confidence, Ryan took his first shot. "Hey, buddy," he called out loud enough for everyone to hear. "You lost or something. This ain't a yoga studio." A few laughs followed. Not many, but enough to feed Ryan's ego. Dwayne didn't flinch. He didn't even glance over. He just kept stretching, every move measured and steady. But in that silence was power. And while Ryan thought he was just poking fun at a quiet stranger, he had no idea who he was dealing with or how far this would go. What began as a throwaway joke would become the gym's most talked about moment. Because when you challenge someone like Dwayne Johnson, it's not just about strength. It's about something much deeper, something Ryan had yet to understand. And as the room returned to its rhythm, one thing was clear. This wasn't going to be just another workout. The smirks, the chuckles, they were like fuel for Ryan. This was his playground, the gym floor, and he thrived on being the loudest, boldest voice in the room. And now he had what he thought was an easy win. A quiet guy in his 50s, stretching alone, in the corner, dressed like he was on his way to a Sunday stroll, not a weight room. Ryan couldn't help himself. The urge to mock, to dominate, to entertain, it was too strong. He raised his voice again, making sure the entire gym could hear him. "You sure you know what you're doing here?" he jeered. "Those sweatpants got me thinking you're here for yoga, not the heavy stuff." This time the laughter was louder. A few gym members exchanged looks, not all amused, some uncertain. But Ryan didn't care. He was in his element, and he was riding the wave of attention like a pro. His voice was playful, sure, but underneath it all there was condescension. It wasn't just a joke, it was a challenge, one designed to humiliate, and still Dwayne said nothing. He didn't smirk, he didn't glare, he didn't even acknowledge the insult. Instead, he rose slowly from his stretch, turned to Ryan, and said in a steady, level tone, "Just here to work out." That was it. 5 words, no bravado, no emotion, but the way he said it, it landed harder than any comeback Ryan could have imagined. For a split second, Ryan hesitated. Something about Dwayne's composure unsettled him, but pride wouldn't let him back down. Not now, not in front of an audience. So he doubled down. "All right, Mr. Silent," Ryan announced, louder now, motioning toward the dumbbells. "Let's see what you've got. Show us how you handle these bad boys. Something simple, dumbbell curls. I mean, that's where most beginners start, right?" The crowd began to shift. People paused their sets. A few trainers leaned in, curious. This was no longer just a jab. It was a public test. And everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Dwayne didn't flinch. He didn't rush or act defensive. He simply walked toward the dumbbell rack with the kind of quiet presence that made people step back without realizing why. He picked up a pair of medium-weight dumbbells, not the heaviest, not the lightest, and tested their balance in his hands. No showing off, no grand entrance, and then he began. Bicep curls, controlled, clean. Each rep was a study in form and focus. His elbows stayed tight to his sides, his breathing perfectly timed, every movement deliberate and efficient. It wasn't flashy, it was professional. The kind of movement that comes from years of discipline. The gym started to shift from snickers to silence. Even those who had laughed at first were now leaning in, watching, reassessing everything. Ryan, arms crossed, still tried to act unimpressed. "Come on, man," he scoffed. "That's warm-up stuff. You're not going to spend the whole day doing baby curls, are you?" He reached for a heavier set of dumbbells, exaggerated his form, and flared his elbows. "This is how you do it. Watch and learn." The theatrics were obvious, but the crowd wasn't laughing the same way they had earlier. Dwayne set the dumbbells down and calmly responded, "I'm good, thanks." No sarcasm, just polite clarity, like someone who knew exactly who he was and didn't need to prove it to anyone. Ryan, not ready to let the spotlight fade, raised his hands theatrically. Okay, maybe dumbbells aren't your thing. Let's crank it up. How about some deadlifts, real weights, real challenge?" Now, the tension in the gym was undeniable. What had started as light teasing had turned into something more serious. Everyone was watching. Phones hadn't come out yet, but the air was heavy, like something big was about to unfold. And still, Dwayne gave nothing away. Not in his face, not in his movements. Only focus. Only silence. Ryan had set the stage, but he had no idea what was coming next. By now, the gym had quieted. Not completely, but enough that people were no longer focused on their own workouts. Eyes began shifting, movements slowed. What had started as a casual jab from an overconfident trainer was clearly spiraling into something more. Ryan, still grinning, still trying to control the narrative, stepped toward the deadlift station, waving a hand like a magician, introducing his next big trick. "All right," he said with the flair of a game show host. "Let's see if you can handle real weights. Deadlifts, big guy. Time to move some serious iron." The barbell was already loaded with enough weight to make the average gym-goer think twice. Thick steel plates sat stacked neatly on both ends, the kind of setup you don't approach unless you know exactly what you're doing. Ryan leaned casually against a nearby machine, arms folded, a smug smirk on his face. "Careful," he said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "This isn't a warm-up bar. Don't want you throwing out your back, old man." Again, Dwayne didn't react. Not a word, not even a glance. He stepped toward the bar with the same calm, centered energy he'd shown all along. No tension, no theatrics. He crouched down and took a moment, adjusting his grip with the care of someone tuning a high-performance engine. His breathing slowed. His fingers curled around the bar. Then he lifted effortlessly. The bar rose clean off the ground, his back straight, his posture impeccable. No wobble, no jerk. He held the bar at the top for a beat, then lowered it down with complete control. And then he did it again, and again. Each repetition just as perfect as the last. Not rushed, not showy, just pure, disciplined power. The room was silent, except for the soft thud of metal returning to rubber. A ripple went through the crowd. First a murmur, then a few audible gasps. Whispers spread from treadmill to dumbbell rack. "Did you see that? His form is insane. That guy's a beast." Even the regulars, the ones who lifted heavy, who trained hard, were starting to realize something. This wasn't luck. This wasn't beginner's form. This was elite-level control. Years of training distilled into a single motion. Ryan's smile faltered, just a little. He clapped his hands once, too loud, like trying to cover the discomfort, blooming in his chest. "Not bad," he said, voice thinner than before. "But lifting is one thing. Let's see how you move. Cardio time, my friend. You look like you might know your way around a punching bag, or is that too much for you?" He pointed toward the heavy bag hanging in the corner of the gym. Most people rarely used it, more for looks than real training. But now it was the next stage in Ryan's crumbling test of dominance. Dwayne looked over, then calmly walked to the bag. There was a flicker in his eyes, subtle, controlled, but unmistakable. The energy in the gym shifted again. People stopped pretending they weren't watching. They turned. They gathered. This was no longer just entertaining. This was turning into something else. Something electric. Ryan stepped aside with mock chivalry. "Show us what you got, Rocky." He threw a few exaggerated punches at the bag before stepping back, clearly trying to play it up for laughs. But then Dwayne stepped in front of the bag. No warm-up, no bouncing around, just a silent moment of stillness. And then the first strike. Wham! The punch landed like thunder. The bag jolted, the chain creaked under the pressure, and the sound echoed like a shotgun through the gym. A second strike followed, then a third. Faster, sharper. Each hit flowed into the next, punches, elbows, even a precise knee strike, like a man who didn't just work out, but trained. Professionally, intensely, dangerously. The crowd's expressions changed from amusement to awe. Ryan, now standing stiffly to the side, crossed his arms tighter. He was watching something he didn't expect. Something that made his own flashy punches look like a child's play. There was no doubt now. Dwayne wasn't just strong. He was skilled. And every second he moved told a story Ryan had never heard before. One of discipline, of repetition, of grit. Still trying to save face, Ryan raised his voice again. "Speed's nice," he muttered, "but let's see some power." But nobody was laughing with him now. Because as Dwayne turned back to face the bag, calm, focused, he planted one foot, shifted his weight, and with a single explosive roundhouse kick, he sent the heavy bag flying sideways. It swung violently, nearly horizontal, the chain above groaning under the strain. A wave of gasps swept through the room. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was reverent. And Ryan, he wasn't smirking anymore. The gym wasn't just watching now, it was transfixed. Everyone had felt the shift. The atmosphere had gone from playful to personal, from laughter to quiet admiration. Dwayne Johnson had flipped the script without uttering more than a sentence. The man who entered unnoticed was now commanding attention with every move. And Ryan, once the loudest voice in the room, was losing his grip on the spotlight. But he wasn't ready to give it up. Not yet. Desperation masked as bravado flickered in Ryan's eyes. He clapped once, a little too sharply, as if trying to jolt the energy back in his favor. "All right," he declared, trying to inject his usual swagger into his voice. "Enough of the warm-ups. Let's see if you can handle something serious." He gestured grandly toward the squat rack, where a loaded barbell sat in silent challenge. The weight was no joke, stacked thick with plates, intimidating to even the most seasoned lifters. People exchanged looks. It was obvious what Ryan was doing. This wasn't about fitness anymore, it was about ego. He needed to win back the room. He needed Dwayne to fail, but Dwayne didn't hesitate. He walked toward the rack with the same quiet purpose that had defined every moment so far. He studied the barbell, not like someone intimidated, but like Someone calculating. Then, with smooth precision, he ducked under it, settled the bar across his shoulders, and stood tall. The room went still, and then he squatted once, twice, 3 times. Each rep was deliberate, controlled, flawless. There was no grimacing, no struggle. His body moved like a machine, one honed by decades of discipline. By the time he returned the bar to the rack, a wave of applause broke out. Not polite, not obligatory, genuine. Even those who had initially sided with Ryan were now nodding, clapping, even cheering. The shift was complete. Dwayne had earned the room. Ryan, now visibly rattled, forced a laugh. "Not bad," he mumbled, eyes darting to the squat rack, like it might offer him a lifeline. But his usual confidence had cracked, and the crowd could feel it. Dwayne, unfazed, walked away from the rack. Not to celebrate, not to gloat, but to continue. No words, just movement, and that, more than anything, was why people couldn't take their eyes off him. He approached the pull-up bar, and without a second of rest, leapt up and began. Wide grip, narrow grip, even one-handed pull-ups. The ease with which he transitioned between variations was surreal. His body moved with a fluid strength that made everything look effortless. The crowd had stopped working out entirely. Phones were coming out now. Whispers turned into astonished commentary. Is that even possible? He's 53, right? What kind of machine is this guy? And yet Dwayne remained locked in, laser-focused, emotionless, efficient. Ryan, realizing he was on the verge of losing the entire room, blurted out, "Okay, enough showboating. Let's finish this with something real. Battle ropes." He pointed to the thick ropes coiled at the edge of the gym floor, hoping the chaos and sheer brutality of the exercise would throw Dwayne off balance. But Dwayne didn't blink. He walked over, picked up the ropes, and without fanfare, began. The first waves were smooth, rhythmic, like water crashing in perfect succession. Then came the slams, thunderous, punishing, relentless. The ropes hit the floor with such force that even the floor beneath them seemed to quake. It wasn't just strength. It was endurance, precision, and control all in one. Dwayne didn't grunt. He didn't flex. He didn't speak. He just worked. When he finally dropped the ropes, the sound echoed through the gym like a mic drop. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was reverent. Even Ryan couldn't hide the truth anymore. He was watching a man who didn't just talk about strength. He lived it, and now the gym knew it too. The ropes dropped to the floor like thunder. The sound echoed longer than expected, as if the gym itself was reacting to the sheer intensity. Dwayne Johnson stood over them, breathing steady, his body still and grounded. No smirk, no look of triumph, just calm, controlled, unbothered. But for Ryan, standing a few feet away, it felt like the walls were closing in. His tricks were spent. His voice, once the loudest in the room, had lost its echo. And now all eyes weren't just on Dwayne. They were looking through Ryan. Still, he wasn't ready to walk away. His pride wouldn't let him. With a weak laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes, Ryan clapped slowly. "Okay, tough guy," he said, his voice trying to find its old rhythm. "But this isn't a boxing gym. Let's get back to what really matters." He led the group back to the weight section, the crowd trailing behind like curious witnesses to a live showdown. "Let's see what you got with something serious," he added, motioning toward the deadlift platform. The barbell waiting there wasn't just heavy, it was borderline dangerous. Stacked with more weight than most of the gym's regulars had ever attempted, it practically dared anyone to touch it. This wasn't just a test of strength, it was a calculated gamble. Ryan didn't believe Dwayne could lift it, and even if he could, maybe this was the moment his calm would crack. But Dwayne? He stepped up like it was just another lift. He didn't ask for a spot. He didn't glance around for approval. He took his time adjusting his stance, checking his form, wrapping his fingers around the steel bar with a calm that bordered on surgical. And then, without a sound, he lifted. The barbell rose from the ground like it weighed nothing. His form was textbook. His back straight, his core locked, his movement as fluid as breath. He didn't rush, he didn't struggle. He pulled the bar all the way up, paused at the top with eerie composure, then lowered it gently back down. And the gym, silent, frozen. Ryan was stone-faced. His smirk, once so sharp, had dulled to a tight line, but Dwayne wasn't finished. Without a word, he stepped back to the barbell and added more weight. The sound of metal plates clanking into place rang through the gym like a warning bell. The crowd gasped. Whispers surged. Is he serious? That's insane. Nobody lifts that here. But Dwayne stayed quiet, unmoved, focused. This wasn't about proving something. This was just what he did. And then he lifted again. More weight. Same flawless form. Same calm. Same control. Cheers broke out. Real, raw, spontaneous applause. People who didn't even know who he was clapped, like they were witnessing something historic. And maybe, in a way, they were, because this wasn't just a show of strength. This was something deeper, something undeniable. And then came the moment. No one saw coming. Dwayne turned to Ryan, eyes steady, voice level. "You wanted to see strength," he said quietly. "Now let's see yours." The words landed like a brick wall. For the first time, Ryan didn't have a comeback. He didn't puff his chest or fake a laugh. He looked at the weight, then back, at Dwayne. And in that moment, just for a second, he looked small. His hands twitched at his sides. His mouth opened, then closed again. No excuses came. No challenge returned. But Dwayne didn't press. He didn't taunt. Instead, he turned to the rest of the gym. "Strength isn't just about lifting heavy," he said calmly. "It's about discipline, respect, knowing when to push and when to hold back." That silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was respectful, the kind of silence that meant everyone had just witnessed something bigger than reps and plates. They'd seen what real strength looked like, and Ryan, he didn't speak. Not yet. Because he knew, in the deepest part of himself, that nothing he could say would match what just happened. For a moment, the gym was completely still. No clanking weights, no beeping machines, no idle chatter, just silence. And the echo of Dwayne Johnson's words hanging in the air like a truth no one could ignore. Strength isn't just about lifting heavy, it's about discipline, respect. Every person in the room felt it, not because it was loud, but because it was real. You could see it in their faces, eyes wide, jaws slightly parted. Something had shifted permanently. And then it happened. A voice broke through the silence, hesitant at first, but loud enough to spark a storm. "Wait a second, that's Dwayne Johnson." It came from the back, but the ripple it created spread. Like wildfire. Heads turned, eyes widened, murmurs grew into exclamations. "Oh my God, it is him. That's the Rock." I thought he looked familiar. Within seconds, phones were out. Screens lit up. Cameras zoomed in. But Dwayne didn't react. He didn't pose. He didn't bask in the attention. He simply stood there, composed, humble, grounded. The same man who had walked in quietly was now the center of a firestorm of realization, and yet he stayed still, offering only a small, knowing smile. Ryan, meanwhile, looked like the floor had just vanished beneath him. His confident posture crumbled. His mouth opened slightly in disbelief, eyes darting from face to face, taking in the reactions of the people he once held captive with jokes and arrogance. He'd just spent the last 20 minutes mocking Dwayne Johnson. The Dwayne Johnson, the man whose workout videos he probably once reposted. The man who redefined fitness, discipline, and what it means to lead by example. And he hadn't just mocked him, he'd challenged him, doubted him, tried to tear him down. And now everyone knew it. The embarrassment hit hard. The laughter was gone now, replaced by admiration, awe, and a subtle wave of shame that swept over Ryan as he stood alone in the middle of the floor. And yet, in this moment when Dwayne could have easily taken a victory lap, rubbed salt in the wound, or put Ryan back in his place for good, he didn't. Instead, he walked up to him. No tension, no gloating, just a man extending his hand. "Everyone starts somewhere," Dwayne said softly. The words weren't dramatic, but they hit harder than any lift, any punch, any crowd reaction that had come before. It was an invitation, a gesture of grace, and the entire gym felt it. Ryan didn't answer right away, his eyes locked on the hand, unsure, vulnerable. Then slowly, he reached out. Their hands met in a firm, silent handshake. And in that second, something unspoken passed between them. Not forgiveness, necessarily, but respect, earned the hard way. There was no cheering, no loud applause, just a quiet understanding that everyone in the room had just witnessed something they wouldn't forget. Not just strength, not just discipline, but true character. Dwayne turned, picked up his gym bag, and began walking toward the exit. The whispers continued, but now they were reverent, grateful, inspired. The same man who had walked in unnoticed was now leaving a legend, but not because he lifted more than anyone else. Because he chose to rise above the noise, lead with humility, and teach a lesson without ever raising his voice. And Ryan? He stood frozen, the handshake still fresh in his mind. The man he tried to humiliate had just lifted him up instead. The buzz in the gym didn't fade as Dwayne walked out. If anything, it only grew louder, not in volume but in energy. People weren't just whispering anymore, they were replaying everything. The quiet man who came in like any other gym-goer had just shifted everyone's perspective. Not with ego, not with fame, but with poise, humility, and unshakable strength. It was as if the walls themselves had recorded the moment and would never forget it. Ryan stood frozen in place, staring at the floor. His hands hung loosely at his sides, his shoulders no longer square, his expression blank. He had started the day as the king of the gym, the guy with all the answers, the jokes, the attention. But now, all of that had vanished. And it wasn't because someone shouted him down or humiliated him. No, it was because someone showed him up without saying a word. Someone who had every reason to hit back, every reason to gloat, and didn't. That handshake still lingered in Ryan's palm like a quiet echo. He exhaled deeply, shoulders sagging just slightly, as if a weight had finally been lifted, one heavier than anything in the squat rack. He had been so focused on proving he was the strongest, so caught up in being admired, that he forgot what real strength even looked like. And now, it had just walked out the door. The other gym members began moving again, slowly returning to their routines, but everything felt different now. The air wasn't heavy with ego anymore, it was lighter, cleaner, as if everyone had just been reminded of something important. You could see it on their faces, an unspoken agreement that what had just happened wasn't ordinary. It wasn't about Dwayne being famous. It was about the way he handled it. No insults, no anger, just action. One of the younger guys, who usually avoided the free weight area out of fear of being judged, stepped a little closer today. He looked toward the dumbbells, eyes a bit more confident. He had seen something in Dwayne's approach, something real, that you didn't need to shout to be strong, that kindness wasn't weakness. That confidence came from within, not from tearing other people down. Another member, older and quieter, nodded to himself as he re-wrapped his lifting belt. He had watched the entire encounter unfold and saw more than just muscle or fame. He saw character, and in that moment he felt proud, not just to witness it, but to be part of a place where lessons like that could still happen. Near the front desk, the gym manager leaned back and crossed his arms, his expression thoughtful. He had seen Ryan's antics before. He'd even considered having a talk with him, but now he didn't need to. The message had been delivered far more powerfully than any HR meeting ever could. Meanwhile, Ryan slowly turned toward the exit where Dwayne had disappeared minutes earlier. His jaw clenched, but not out of anger, out of regret. There was no one else to blame, no spotlight to hide behind, just a man forced to reflect on who he had become and who he could be if he chose better. And that was the beauty of it. Dwayne didn't just outlift him, he outclassed him, without ever making it personal, without ever trying to win. And in doing so, he taught everyone in that gym something they hadn't come for, but desperately needed. Real strength doesn't walk in yelling. It doesn't mock or belittle. It moves in silence. It leads by example. And sometimes, it shakes your world without ever raising its voice. As the doors closed behind Dwayne Johnson, the gym slowly returned to its regular rhythm. But something in the air had changed. You could feel it in the way people moved, quieter, more thoughtful. You could hear it in the conversations whispered across weight benches and cardio machines. What they had witnessed wasn't just about a celebrity showing up for a workout. It was something bigger, something unforgettable Dwayne hadn't come to impress. He hadn't walked in flexing or bragging or demanding attention. He came for a simple workout, just like anyone else. But the way he handled every insult, every challenge, and every ounce of mockery with unshakable calm and unwavering class left a mark on everyone who saw it. Because true strength, the kind that really matters, isn't measured by how much you can lift or how loud you talk. It's measured by how you carry yourself when nobody expects you to shine. Ryan had started the day as the man everyone watched. The guy with the biggest voice, the biggest ego, and the sharpest comebacks. But by the end, he wasn't the one people remembered. It wasn't just that he got outlifted. It was that he got outmatched in something far more rare: humility. And Dwayne didn't humiliate him. He offered him a hand, a lesson, a second chance. That's what made the moment so powerful, because Dwayne had every reason to mock Ryan back, to embarrass him, to turn the tables. But he didn't. He chose respect. He chose grace. And in doing so, he reminded everyone in that room and everyone watching now what real strength looks like. It's not the guy shouting the loudest. It's not the one trying to dominate every conversation. It's the one who doesn't need to prove anything, and yet proves everything through action alone. For the gym members, this wasn't just a moment. They knew it would stay with them. The ones who had always admired Ryan's boldness now saw it in a different light. They realized that confidence isn't about tearing others down. It's about lifting others up even when you don't have to. One younger member who'd always hesitated near the weight section found himself walking over with a little more belief in himself. Another looked in the mirror, not to check his muscles, but to check his mindset. And Ryan, he didn't say much after. He didn't need to. His silence spoke volumes. He'd been shown something no amount of training could teach, that no matter how strong you think you are, there's always a higher standard, and it starts with how you treat people. This story is more than a gym tale. It's a reminder for every one of us that the quietest people often carry the loudest lessons. That character will always outshine arrogance, and that sometimes the most powerful message is delivered without a single shout, just a simple look, a flawless lift, and a hand extended in respect. So the next time you walk into a room, remember, strength isn't something you demand. It's something you earn. And if this story moved you, share it, because the world needs more of this kind of strength, the quiet, steady, humble kind, the kind that leaves people not just watching, but changed.